Forget the slushy pink drink with the umbrella. The real daiquiri was born in Cuba. Icy, crisp, and just strong enough to make the afternoon interesting. Then, Hemingway walked in. He dialed it up, made it his own, and left a trail of empty glasses behind. This is the Hemingway Daiquiri. So welcome back to History in a Glass. I'm Josh, your guide in this tipsy time machine through history. Now, if I'm being honest, before I researched this cocktail, I would have told you that a daiquiri was probably one of those frozen drinks you get from a resort bar or from a slush machine. And sadly, too many people would say the same thing. Turns out, a real daiquiri is way more than a frozen strawberry slushie spinning in a machine behind a bar. Today, we're chasing the daiquiri through Havana's golden age, from a refined Cuban classic to a high-octane variation ordered by one of the most famous drinkers in literary history. We'll ditch the syrupy slush, dig into what Hemingway actually drank, and see how one man turned a simple drink into an international legend, one double shot at a time. And I have to give a huge nod to Have and Have Another by Philip Green. It's an awesome read and a great resource for this episode. If you want to go deeper on Hemingway's literary connection to cocktails and his own drinking habits, this is a must-read. I dropped a link for it in the description along with the gear I use, so if you're interested, go ahead and check it out. So if you're ready, go ahead and grab your ingredients because it's time to meet the real daiquiri Hemingway called his own. The daiquiri's got one of those blurry origin stories. I mean, when your entire recipe is rum, lime, sugar, and ice, it's not exactly rocket science. British sailors were mixing that combo, minus the ice, into grog back in the 1700s. It was only a matter of time before it washed up on a Caribbean beach. In Cuba, it showed up in drinks like the Constantino, which was a rough mix of rum, lime, honey, and water, sipped by independence fighters in the 1800s. So yeah, this flavor combo has been floating around long before it had a name. As for the name, well, there are a handful of stories, but a couple credit Jennings Cox, an American mining engineer working near a town called Daiquiri after the Spanish-American War. The legend goes, one day in 1898, Cox mixes up some rum, lime, and sugar for visiting friends. When asked what it's called, he shrugs and says, "Rum sour?" One friend says, "Nah, that's too long. Let's call it a daiquiri." Now, whether that's true or not, the name stuck, and the drink spread from mine camps to Santiago, then Havana, and that's where it hits its glow up. El Floridita was already a cocktail hotspot, but when Constantino Ribalaigua Vert, or Constante, as most people called him, took over in 1918, the place became Daiquiri HQ. He didn't just mix daiquiris, he refined them into something timeless. By the late 30s, El Floridita had 5 numbered versions on the menu, some with maraschino, some with curacao, and they were shaken or blended. His daiquiri number 4 was the standout. Reporters called it his ace in the hole. Shaved ice, rum, lime, sugar, maraschino, blended until it hit that perfect slushy but smooth sweet spot. But the real magic? Constante was using a milkshake mixer and did it before anyone else. And it wasn't just for show, it was for texture. He was chasing that clean, cold glide across the tongue. It was still just a daiquiri, but no one else was making them quite like that. So enter Ernest Hemingway, no stranger to booze. He wrote about cocktails, he drank like it was his job, and depending on who you ask, it kinda was. He drank his way through the cocktail boom in 1920s Paris, then landed in Havana in '39, just as the daiquiri was hitting its stride. At the time, he was living at Hotel Ambos Mundos, which was just a short walk from El Floridita. He passed it almost daily. The story goes, Hemingway first stopped in just to use the bathroom, but on the way out, he happened to see a row of daiquiris lined up on the bar. And Hemingway was a lot of things, but someone who walks past a drink, let's just say that didn't make the list. He picked one up, took a sip, finished his round, and told the bartender, "That's good, but I prefer it with no sugar and double the rum." That was pure Hemingway. No sweetness, no moderation, just citrus and alcohol. Although he was never formally diagnosed, Hemingway believed he had diabetes, so sugar was off limits. But rum was fair game. In Constante, he didn't flinch. He made it on the spot, dry, tart, and loaded. And that's how we get the Papa Doble. Literally, double Papa. You see, Papa was Hemingway's nickname in Cuba, where locals knew him as a larger-than-life presence. It wasn't on any menu at first, but Hemingway drank so many of them at El Floridita, they put it in their cocktail book. Seriously, he was known to have put down about 6 of these on an average afternoon. And by the time the legend spread, tourists were lining up to drink like Papa. even if most couldn't handle it. By the time Hemingway made his mark on the daiquiri, the drink had already evolved into something refined and precise. What he did was strip it down to its core and then double it. The version we know as the Papa Doble, or the Hemingway Special, is both an outlier and a legend, a dry, boozy, sugar-free spin on the Cuban icon. Now, we may not have the actual specs for that first off-menu order, but we do have what the bar was serving at the time. In 1939, El Floridita published its official cocktail book, and right there on page 28 is Daiquiri number 3, also called the Floridita Special. It was their house daiquiri, and the one that Hemingway probably would have seen lined up on the bar that day. Daiquiri number 3 was made up of 2 ounces of rum, a teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of grapefruit juice, 1 teaspoon of maraschino liqueur, and the juice from half of a lemon, and then it used shaved ice and blended frappe style. If you flip to the next page, you get the first daiquiri with Hemingway's name actually on it. Well, kind of. There's a misspelling on his name, but either way, the E Hemingway Special was made up of 2 ounces of rum, 1 teaspoon of grapefruit juice, 1 teaspoon of maraschino, juice of half of a lemon, blended ice, served frappe. It's the same drink minus the sugar, and this is what was served to tourists who wanted what Papa had, just without the liver damage. Now, usually I try to find the first printed recipe for the cocktail we're highlighting in the episode, and this is it. But come on, 2 ounces of rum? That's not a very Hemingway pour. So now we jump to 1947 to Papa Hemingway, a personal memoir by A.E. Hotchner, and this gives us the final form, the Papa Doble. Double the rum, no sugar, more citrus, and a blender to smooth it all out. And this is the one that we're making today. Let's take a look at the ingredients, starting with, you guessed it, the booze. To start, we need 3 3/4 ounces of a white rum. Now, technically, Hemingway drank Cuban rum, but thanks to the embargo, real Cuban bottles aren't legally available here in the US, and I just so happened to run out of smuggled bottles of Havana Club, so today we're using Floridita, which is a Nicaraguan column still rum that's dry, clean, and lightly oaked. And yes, it's not identical to Cuban rum, but it lands in the same flavor neighborhood. Don Q Crystal, Plantation 3-Star, or even El Dorado 3-Year are solid backups here. Next, we need 6 drops, but I'm going to use about a half of a bar spoon of maraschino liqueur. There's no substitute. It's one of the oldest liqueurs still in production, made of Mascara cherries, grown in northern Italy. And you can find it pretty much everywhere. And then we'll also need 2 ounces of fresh lime juice, 2 ounces of fresh grapefruit juice, and then we're going to need a bunch of crushed ice. So let's go ahead and build our Papa Doble. This was one of the first serious uses of a spindle blender behind the bar. Constante was doing this in the 30s, way before wearing blenders hit American kitchens. It wasn't tiki, it wasn't a gimmick, it was a modern technique with Cuban precision. According to several biographies and first-hand accounts, Hemingway typically drank in the afternoon, often after writing. He followed a rigid work schedule. Write in the morning, drink later in the day. His early biographer Carlos Baker said he never drank while he was working, and he never worked after he'd been drinking. Now that we have all of our ingredients in our blender, it's time to move on to the ice. Crushed ice blends faster and smoother, giving you that cold, velvety texture without turning the drink into a watery slush. So we can go ahead and just use our Lewis bag here. We're going to fill it with regular ice cubes and then use our mallet to turn the ice into small, dry chunks, just enough to blend smooth and cold without watering down the drink. The Bacardi Hemingway was drinking was actually Cuban, made in Santiago before the company fled post-revolution. A totally different beast from today's Puerto Rican version. That's part of why we're using Floridita, closer to flavor than modern Bacardi. Now we just need to add our ice into the blender, and then we're going to blend it for just about 8 to 10 seconds max. El Floridita chilled their coupe glasses in piles of shaved ice. They didn't just serve cold drinks, they served cold everything. Even the glass felt like it came out of a glacier. Go ahead and pour it into our glass. And obviously, the only thing missing, our straw. All right, so here we have it, our Papa Doble Hemingway Special Daiquiri. Let's go ahead and give it a try. Cheers. Okay, this is sour, very tart, obviously coming from the citrus. Very cold, refreshing, and definitely very smooth. But without that sugar, you definitely don't get balance here. The interesting thing here is that I can't taste the alcohol in this at all. And yeah, this may not be the easiest daiquiri to love, but it reflects Hemingway's preference for a daiquiri with double the rum and with no sugar. It's honest, and it hits exactly as it was meant to. Hemingway didn't just order this drink. He built a ritual around it. He had his own bar stool, his own daily routine, and he brought celebrities, diplomats, fighters, and film stars to El Floridita. His legend grew at that bar, and according to staff, he once put away 17 Papa Dobles in a single day. That's 64 ounces of rum. There's a bronze statue of him over his old seat today, and the area is roped off so nobody else sits there. Because even in death, Hemingway still owns that bar. And I'll leave you with a simple quote from Hemingway. "I drink to make other people more interesting." Thanks for keeping history alive with me one sip at a time. Until next time, drink responsibly, or at least drink historically.